Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and today's going to be a tad bit different than usual. I'm going to talk about some of the things that are going to happen next year, and usually at the end of the year, a lot of people start to look onward to some of their most anticipated games for each platform, and I think for the most part, next year is stacking up fairly well. Now, I'm sure we don't know every single game that will launch next year, so it could actually end up getting a little bit better as time goes on, but for right now, I think on the side of Xbox, on paper at the very least, it's one of their best-looking lineups of all time. And we've talked a lot about that in previous videos with games like Halo, Gears, Fable, Forza Horizon 6, there's Clockwork Revolution, and maybe even potentially Spyro 4. All of those could potentially release in 2026, so on paper, it sounds really good for them. Now, their hardware, that's a completely different story. But then if you look at Nintendo, I think a lot of their lineup is still under wraps. We'll learn a lot more about their pipeline as the year progresses, as they typically have a short build-up from announcement to launch. But we do at the very least know about a few games like Splatoon Raiders, there's Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which is actually one of my most anticipated games for next year, there's Mario Tennis, there's the new Yoshi game, and like I said, I'm fairly sure they're going to have a few more surprises through various different directs. Sony, on the other hand, is really what inspired me to talk about this topic today, because really throughout the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4 era, they made a name for themselves because of their first-party studios. You just kind of knew that their first-party studios were going to deliver the goods. But the PlayStation 5 generation really has not gone that way at all. I mean, if I look at their 2026 lineup, and I'm not expecting a lot of surprises from them next year, but I believe it's the third year in a row that I think it looks kind of pedestrian for a PlayStation lineup. I mean, we're kind of getting to the point that the PlayStation 5 might actually be Sony's weakest generation from a first-party point of perspective. And don't take this as a hate video. I actually really like Sony, and the PlayStation 5 was actually my most played console this year. But I can't help but be disappointed by their continuous lackluster lineups compared to what they used to be. I mean, you have to remember that one of my all-time favorite consoles is the PlayStation 3, and that's because of its insane exclusive catalog. And Sony really continued that momentum throughout the PlayStation 4 era. So I just want to talk about that today and why fans are seemingly accepting, in my opinion, a lower quality Sony than what we've been used to, and that's where I'm a little bit confused as to how we got here. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with kind of a weird story, but maybe an important one if you receive a lot of messages on Xbox or if you just have a lot of online friends. Now, I don't personally, because I play with a very specific group of friends, and most of our messaging is now done through the phone anyways. But I know when I was younger, especially during the Xbox 360 days, I mean, we were all constantly messaging each other on Xbox because we played a ton of games together. So if you're in that category, then you might want to go back and delete a lot of your messages and maybe even some of your friends that you don't interact with anymore because somebody reported that after they removed 1,000 plus friends on Xbox and cleared out their messages, not only did the Xbox UI's performance improve, but also their games became more responsive as well. Now, to be fair, I would like to see more testing done for this, maybe from somebody like Digital Foundry to see how true it actually is. But even still, I think especially on the UI side of things, if your Xbox seems to be a little bit less snappy than it used to be, then maybe give it a try and see if it improves. Now, we also got an update for one of this year's biggest surprise hits, being Fantasy Life I. A lot of people do consider it as one of the better games of 2025, especially on the Switch 2, and that's why I'm happy to say that it has now surpassed 1.5 million units sold. I think that's pretty incredible, and even more so when you realize that this was the first Western game from Level 5 in quite some time. I mean, personally, I think they're one of the more charming studios with franchises like Professor Layton, they have Ni no Kuni, and Yokai Watch, but there for a while, they kind of abandoned the West and instead prioritized Japan. So I am glad to see their return to the West be so successful, and hopefully that will continue into the future as well. Now, it also sounds like Mega Man fans are in for a fun year because its producer had this to say about 2026. The Mega Man series will celebrate its 40th anniversary in 2027. I want to make this a year dedicated to preparing for this milestone. We will be focusing our efforts to bring fans good news, so I hope you'll look forward to it. We appreciate your continued support of the Mega Man series in 2026 as well. Now, of course, they just announced that Mega Man 12 will launch in 2027, so, we know that's their big 40th anniversary title. But the claim that 2026 will be used to kind of prepare for 2027, that's an interesting tease, and some might take it as, well, they're just going to give us some trailers in 2026 and that's all, but I don't know about that. I think there's a decent chance that they could have a bit more, maybe not necessarily in terms of brand new games, but maybe in terms of some remasters. Capcom has done a fairly good job at porting a lot of the older Mega Man titles to modern systems, and that even includes the Battle Network GBA titles. So we could possibly see more of that in 2026, and hey, maybe, just maybe, they'll finally remaster the Legends series. I know Mega Man fans have been begging Capcom to do that for years, so who knows? Maybe it's finally time. Now, at the same time, don't get your hopes up too much. I'm only speculating, but let me know what you think about this in the comments below. All right, now let's go talk about PlayStation and their lineup of games for 2026, because I saw this highlighted earlier today, and I couldn't help but look at it and be disappointed. Now, to be completely fair, I don't think that it's a terrible lineup, but in comparison to the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, I just feel like the PlayStation 5 has been a huge step back for Sony. And I know the exact reason as to why. Now, I'll get into that here in just a moment, but as of this recording, here are the Sony games that we know about for 2026, and I'm not expecting a lot of surprises from them next year. First off, though, there's Saros, which I think looks pretty good. Housemarque has a knack for making fun, arcade-like experiences, and I think Saros has the potential to be a better version of Returnal, which a lot of people really enjoyed. Now, it's probably not going to be a huge seller for Sony, but it will more than likely be a fun game, and I think that that's perfectly fine. I like when Sony is a little bit more creative, and a lot of their smaller experiences, to me, actually end up being some of their best games, and that's my hope for Saros. Now, there's also Tocom, though technically this is a second-party game, but it is being developed in conjunction with Sony, and it's more or less the return of Marvel vs. Capcom. It shares a lot of similarities, and I think it looks pretty incredible so far. Now, I will say that I think that they should probably push Tocom to be a completely multi-platform game at some point, because I think fighting games, more so than other genres, really benefit from that. They need active communities to live on for a long time, but at the very least, it will be on PC at launch, which is really good to hear. Then the one other big game that they have is Wolverine. Now, this is Insomniac's next big experience, which, you can definitely tell. Its combat looks very reminiscent of Spider-Man, albeit with a lot more gore. But admittedly, I am a little bit skeptical about how they're going to treat the characters and story for Wolverine. I'm still optimistic because of the gameplay, but it's one of those I'll wait and see type of things. My point being, though, is that those are pretty much the only traditional Sony-like experiences that they have prepared for next year, which is such a contrast compared to what they used to be. Now, if you look at their live service stuff, they do have games like Marathon and potentially Fair Games. They also have MLB The Show, I guess, but that's kind of the issue with Sony right now. I've talked about this before, but Sony's generation can mostly be defined by their failed live service projects, and then the one big blockbuster game that they have per year, if even that. And that's because of people like Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst. They just put too much stock into their live service games this generation. And even a lot of their traditional single-player studios were at one point working on a live service project. Now, a lot of those games ended up getting canceled, big surprise there. But because of all of that, their pipeline is completely out of whack. And 2026, to me, doesn't look much better than it has these past few years. Now, maybe you feel completely different about this. Maybe you look at this lineup and you just think it looks incredible. And if you do, give me your reason in the comments below. But that's where I feel like we've gotten to a point that people are kind of accepting a lesser version of Sony than what we're kind of used to. I mean, I understand that they're kind of the default console to go now. They don't really have a lot of competition, but at the same time, I feel like it's been a frustrating generation if you like PlayStation games, which I very much do. I mean, I just feel like the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 3 were so much better than this. Not only because of their output, I mean, they were releasing games at a much more regular cadence, but also because they actually allowed for more creativity. But again, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you agree with me, or do you actually think that next year is a good lineup for Sony? And hey, there's no wrong answers. Let me hear it in the comments below. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.